We're back on the podcast with this beauty. Letters of C.G. Jung, Volume 2. Today, we're going to get into a letter which refers to Goethe, who wrote Faust. And in the previous episode, we quoted some Faust when discussing transference and freedom. The freedom a person has to either blossom when they have a realization, to take the hopes and dreams and expectations and move forward, or, pardon me, or to regress, to go back, put the persona on. That's the choice. We all have it. And this leads to today's episode, where it'll be a shorter one today. We're just going to read a letter from Jung, a very short one, and then it leads into shadow. This letter and this point is really big on shadow, and it's going to lead into a bit of a interesting point that leads to a story Jung mentions in Memories, Dreams, Reflections in his biography. So let's get into it. The letter is to a gentleman, Oscar Schmidt. Oscar Schmidt was a famous, I think, Brazilian basketball player, Oscar Schmidt. But anyway, Hall of Famer. But that's not relevant for today. 21 July 1927. I'll just go to the highlights. He says, there is something still a little unclear about the relation to woman. He then says, Goethe too was a great bluffer. So he's having a go at the author of Faust. Not only during his lifetime, but in particular posthumously, after he died, he has had an increasingly bedazzling effect. Now here's the bit I put in quotations. I doubt the genuineness of the complete man. It is too much of a concoction. What was his marriage really like? I'm going to put the book down and get into this. So I'm going to go back to the book. It's such a big quote. I doubt the genuineness of the complete man. Now that's shadow. That's the persona. The persona we put out, the archetypal projection of whatever, hero, God image. So Jung's saying, I doubt that, the complete man. It is too much of a concoction. So it's not real. And this applies a lot in our very online world, our Instagram world, our TikTok world, our fast food solutions world. The world, life doesn't really work like that, unfortunately. It's a concoction, one that it's kind of like in the previous episode where we talked about, the person can blossom and move forward with the reality of their infantile relation to the world, or they can regress back to the persona mask, the shattered mask. This is a similar analogy. The person can move forward with the reality of there isn't the complete man or woman, the perfect man. That's a concoction. They can blossom if they see that shadow, that reality, that two-sided God image, because a complete man or woman is a God image. It doesn't have a back. It's like Yahweh in Book of Job. Yahweh has no back, and he's projecting forward. He's a front-facing God image in the Book of Job. This is all from a psychological perspective. I'm not talking about... I'm talking about a metaphysical projection psychologically happening. I'm not talking about getting into people's religion and all that. That's fine. Do what you do. That's your business. I'm talking about the psychological projection of the God image here. And that's a concoction in the sense of people projecting that, going towards that, the quick fix. There isn't suffering in that projection. It's not real. It's a concoction. Should have got the definition of concoction out for this, but maybe I will. But that's a concoction, okay? We can go towards that, but that's really a regression. If we make the analogy to the transference, where the persona mask was a regression, going to the concoction, the false idea we have of ourselves as the complete man, the complete woman, which is a God image. It's not a transformed God image. You see, now we're getting into Edinger territory, my friend. You transform the God image. When you transform the God image, it has a back, it has a shadow. And it's not out there. It's not projected. The projection is withdrawn. Now, you can identify with the God image. You're in trouble there. Inflation, it's an avoiding of, it's infantile. That's the problem. That's the circular nature of the depth psychology, because now when we're linking Jung back to the previous episode, where it's infantile thinking, this complete man, complete woman business is infantile thinking. It's not adult. It's a projection. It's a transference. And it's dangerous to identify with it. It's also dangerous to project it. What do? You transform the God image. You transform it. It's not out there. It's here within, but not identified with it as. The other problem is the identification is unconscious. Now we're getting into some interesting territory. Let's not overcomplicate it. But these ruminations I'm giving you, this is the God image business, okay? The psychological God image. These are the things, the ideas to float around in your head. It might be a bit much at this stage of the game and this stage of the podcast, but just get that God, these ideas, the projection of it, the identification of it, the Nietzsche's God is dead, where did it go? These are the things. Living a religious life, living a symbolic life. What is symbolic in my life? Where is there meaning? The first episode of the podcast, Nietzsche said, living a grand life, something beyond oneself. All these things, they're all tied in. Now, if you go to a concoction such as the complete man, it's a regression. It's like when the patient identifies a transference, and instead of going towards the truth, which cuts the infantile, which has some harsh realities, but it has a forward-moving freedom. That's what Jung talked about in the last episode. Freedom. It has a freedom, an independence, right? And Jung said that is a expectations and hopes that blossom, growth, forward-striving function, moving forward. The same is here with facing or shattering the projection of the complete man or woman, the identification of the complete man or woman. If you are able to let go of that, you are entering the shadow. No longer front-facing. There's two sides. That's forward-moving. But if you stay with the concoction, it's like the last episode, you regress back. You're going towards an infantile way of thinking. You're not withdrawing the projection. You're, as Jung said, the shattered persona, which is a mask. You're regressing to reconfigure the shattered persona, the shattered mask. It's infantile. It's going back. But if you face it, you move forward. You integrate the shadow. You put a torch, a light into it, and you move forward. This way, you're coming back. You're not putting a torch, you're dropping the damn torch and you're just going deeper into the dark. So he says Goethe was a great bluffer, puffed up, inflated. Not only during his lifetime, but had a bedazzling effect. What was his marriage really like? And then Jung says, we're going to get into this marriage business. That's the memories, dreams, reflections thing I wanted to talk about. Jung then says, because of your negative mother complex, all sorts of unrealized safeguards against feminine influence were still to be expected. And then he says, woman is world and fate. That is why she is so important to the man. Interesting. I don't really have much to add to that. It speaks for itself. But the bit I want to talk about is the negative mother complex and the feminine. So that's important. So he's saying to this gentleman, you have all sorts of unrealized safeguards against feminine influence because of your negative mother complex. So because of the negative relation to the mother, the negative mother imago, the negative mother image, the first contact with the mother figure, the feminine, is negative. We got into complexes a couple of episodes ago. The bundle of energy, the history associated with mother, both personal and archetypal, is negative for this gentleman. And because of that, he has unrealized safeguards. What does that really mean? Unrealized is unconscious. He's not aware. Safeguards, defense mechanisms against feminine influence. That's very important because it's not only the mother complex that's the issue here, it's a toxic masculinity. And if you've had either a lack of a father figure or a toxic, one-sided masculine father figure with no feminine, that's going to make it doubly worse. But we don't know that about this gentleman. We just know that the negative mother complex was enough. So that means there's going to be issues with female relationships because it's an unconscious defense mechanism against female influence. So the feminine, he's going to, it's negative. It's a negative mother complex. So for him, the feminine influence has been negative. Things popping into my mind now are the devouring mother, terrible mother from Collected Work 5, Symbols of Transformation, medusa archetype, vampire archetype. Now, all these archetypes and symbols I mentioned, medusa, the vampire, they're all energy sucking, energy draining. They live off, not the medusa, but the vampire that lives off blood. And I'm thinking of, I forget her name. There's a lecture given by a lady who has unfortunately passed away, a Jungian analyst. Her name was Sue something. I forget her last name. If anyone's interested in, one second, I need to adjust my book is dancing on my hand. If anyone's interested, I can give you the information because it's important. So if you have dreams of a vampire appearing, if you feel you have your energy drained by a mother, even a father, it applies to the father as well, you can just reach out to me. Instagram or an email will do, or even on here if you're watching on YouTube. But if you're on the podcast on audio, just reach out to me. Sylvia Plath is mentioned in this lecture. It's about the archetypal, the vampire archetype and the energy and blood sucking. And it's very important for the negative mother complex. And it talks about Sylvia Plath was, I think, this Jungian analyst had linked the three women that had horrible, sorry to say, but horrible mothers. They were horrible mother examples. I'll be politically correct. But, they all ended up committing suicide. It's a very dark study this analyst put together. James Hollis alerted me to this, and he was kind enough in correspondence to direct me precisely to the lecture, which I then bought and listened to. It's an audio lecture. I believe James Hollis told me that I think there was an article as well. I don't think I was able to track that down, but I thank James for his assistance with that, because it was important for me to listen to this. It just made a lot of sense to me. It was powerful, and it helped me, and with some dream work I had. So reach out to me for that. And yeah, it's important. The analyst made an important distinction that it also applies to the father. It's not just limited to the mother, but it's very common for the mother, this vampire archetype. The negative mother complex, Medusa as well, it's that you look in the eyes and you turn to stone. Very negative feminine mother relation complex. So if you have dreams of Medusa or you relate to that, look into that. Think about it. They're all kind of tied into this really negative, dark mother. And there's I forget her name. There's a great lecture on YouTube on the Medusa mother, Medusa archetype. I believe, I know Bud Harris, Jungian analyst, it's his wife. I just forget her name. She's a very nice person, very lovely person. She's written a book as well, but she's got a lecture on YouTube. I highly recommend listening to that if you have a negative mother complex. And Medusa, like vampiric archetype type of mother. Massimilia, I forget the last name, but she's married to Bud Harris, and they're both Jungian analysts, and I recommend going to YouTube for that if you're interested. What does this lead me to? Let's put the book down. Jung said here, what was his relationship like with his wife? I should get to that page. I want to quote that properly. It's important because I randomly think of this all the time. I love it because when I doubt my own shadow, I have my own shaming issues. I sometimes say to myself, am I that effed up? I mean, how much shadow can I have? Like, are there some people out there? This was more early in my individuation. I still had that projection that maybe, people don't have a shadow or something. And Jung says, what was his marriage really like? I doubt the complete man. It's too much of a concoction. What was his marriage really like? And that reminds me, and this is when, a long time ago, when I read Memories, Dreams, Reflections, the part where Jung, and I'm paraphrasing here, I've just read so much stuff, I'm studying so much stuff, I've done so much of my own active imagination, analysis. Sometimes it's like a roller coaster. There's so much information and processing happening, I forget specifics. So bear with me if it's wrong. Just actually comment or message me if I get the exact particulars of the story wrong. But Jung's describing this priest. I believe it's Jung or someone Jung knows. But Jung tells the story. And I think he followed him for 2 days or a few days. And he says he couldn't believe it. Jung was saying, have I found the man with no shadow? It was perplexing him. But then I think on the final day he saw the priest at home, and paraphrasing, I think he treated his wife like dirt. He put all his shadow on her. So he was nice to everyone else. But to his wife, that's where the shadow was. And that really resonated with me. I thought, aha. So even if, it appears someone doesn't have a shadow, it's where do you look? And always at home, it's very common. Always at home is often where the shadow is projected and dumped, especially if it's an anima, negative, and this links in with the negative mother. We're making links here. Negative mother complex was mentioned. So that can be projected onto the spouse. It's and vice versa for the wife or the woman. In the intimate relations, these are deep. These go to attachment issues. These go to the parental imagos, the unresolved, deeply buried, repressed habits. So deep. And that's why, when in the last episode, when Jung talked about transference, he said it's linked to the primordial instinct. Primordial meaning archaic, primitive, a priori. We're born with it, those deep things over eons that, we've just absorbed in the objective psyche, absorbed in our minds, animal instinct, all these things. And the transference, which is linked with parental projection, attachment projections, that's transferred to the therapist, and that's primordial, that's instinctual. The same with the negative mother complex or the negative father complex. That's projected. And often it's so unconscious and so deep and so primordial and so repressed that it's projected onto the partner without the person knowing. So they, sorry to say, pardon the French, they dump the shit on their partner. Both ways, both genders. Men do it a lot. That bloody mother issue, they just transfer it on. But women do it too. The coldness, the animus. It's just part of life. But that's what he's getting at here with the shadow. So a good lesson can be, where are you animus projecting? Where are you anima projecting? Where for the men? Are you dumping when you really can't say no to your mother, are you dumping that frustration on the partner? You're nice to everyone out in the world, people pleaser, but at home, you're a bit of an asshole. That's what it comes down to. And vice versa for the woman to the man. Being cold and hard and rigid and hammering the man, transferring the father imago image onto the man, an unbalanced masculine with the feminine, possession by the animus. Just like a man gets possessed by his anima. He's a tyrant. He's a moody baby. I was going to use another word, but it starts with a B. But it's just annoying and childlike, infantile, and that's what it gets back to. This attachment shadow projection is infantile, just like the transference is. But the transference has a purpose. When you're just shadow projecting at home, you're just being a nuisance to everyone and you're probably ruining your relationship. So a key thing to take from this is, someone can appear perfect, but what are they like at home? They talk it up, out and about. Me here on this, I'm talking it up. What am I like at home? Ask yourself, and you see someone on giving advice or out on the internet, out on TV. They seem so perfect. Well, they're not. I'm not. I drop the ball all the time at home, but I'm working on it and I'm trying to get control of the anima. I'm trying not to project my attachment issues, and these things are ongoing. But if someone sits there and talks to you like they don't do it at home, well, that's just bullshit. And that's what Jung is saying, that's bullshit. All the things I'm saying now, Jung's saying that is bullshit without saying that's bullshit. He's doing it in a very suave, polite way. He's saying it's a concoction. It's bluff. I don't believe in it. What's his marriage like? Simple question. Ask someone's wife what they're like. Ask someone's husband, and then you'll get the answer. That's the shadow. That's where you find the shadow. That's all I got for today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And have a great day. Look after yourself. And just start being a bit conscious of the shadow and the projections. How are we treating the people we live with? That's a good question for the shadow. Enjoy your day.